My name's Scott Neilsen, and I'm a professor in the Department of Archaeology at Memorial, but I'm based in Labrador at the Labrador Institute, so I'm joining you from my home in Northwest River today. I also want to thank Valerie for giving the land acknowledgement at the beginning. I am going to talk just briefly about land acknowledgements, but I won't give the acknowledgement again, but it is part of my course, so I thought I would just talk about it briefly. But what my intention today is just to kind of spend, 15 minutes or so showing some of the highlights of an online course that I teach in Brightspace. That's the platform that we'll be using, and I think Jonathan's going to share my course shell with you here shortly so that everybody can see it as well. So what I'll do is talk through some of the highlights of this, or some of the things that I think are kind of the key aspects of it. Not going over so much the course content, but just kind of key things within Brightspace. And then, as Ruth said, I can answer any kind of questions that people have at the end. I should also mention that I am the coordinator for the what will be called the Indigenous Studies Certificate, or the Certificate for Indigenous Studies, in the next iteration of the university calendar. And so if any students have questions about that certificate, this may not be the place to ask them, but you can feel free to email me and ask me any questions you have about the certificate, and I'm more than happy to answer those. My email is just my name, so scott.nielsen@mun.ca, and you can find it on the website and stuff too. So Jonathan, if you can jump to the course content page within my course shell, I'll start going over a couple things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about briefly about the land acknowledgement and then the course syllabus. And then I'll also talk about some of the important aspects of communication and assessment within the online courses, just so that everybody can kind of get used to it. So the page that you're seeing there now is the typical table of contents from my course. Down the left-hand side of the page, you'll see all the various kind of components of the course. So the land acknowledgement, and then there's a section on NL, on Indigenous diversity in Newfoundland and Labrador, and then getting started, and then you get into the syllabus, and then you'll also see that there's a table of contents section for each week of the course as well. So it's broken down it's quite easy to follow, and all the sort of details that you need to see there are, as students are there. The land acknowledgement, as I mentioned before, I'm not going to read that again. Valerie gave that to us, and I just wanted to just briefly mention why that's in the course and why I include it in all my courses, and just to touch on something that's going on at Memorial Universities right now that I think is quite significant. So as incoming students, you're actually coming into the university at a time when there's a lot of effort being put forward by key members of the university into kind of trying to indigenize the curriculum and indigenize our courses. And so the land acknowledgement, having that at the beginning of the course, along with information on kind of Indigenous groups within Newfoundland and Labrador, so on the Innu, the Inuit, and the Mi'kmaq, it's important for students, for one, to kind of have that as a refresher and a reminder. But as an instructor, I find it's also very important for me too. So by having that at the beginning of this online course, and also in every course that I teach personally, it reminds me of kind of the responsibilities I have around trying to indigenize my own curriculum and be accountable to the people whose land that I live on and teach on. So this is something that we're starting to see more and more frequently in courses at Memorial, and it's something that I would encourage students, if it's not talked about in your courses, that you ask your instructors about it and that sort of thing. Now, I know that those can be difficult questions and that sort of thing, but if you do have the confidence as a student to bring a question like that up to your instructor about land acknowledgements and the importance of them, it's certainly an important discussion point, and it helps to keep us all accountable. But I think what I'll do now is, Jonathan, if you can jump ahead to the syllabus. I'll go over a bit of my syllabus, just because the syllabus that you see in an online course, as well as in an in-person course, is, I think, one of the most important documents that is there. And it's the way that as students, you should start off each course. So at the beginning of the course, either before classes start or at the very beginning of the course, I recommend that you go through the course syllabus in detail and keep notes about it. And that if whatever isn't clear in there, because as instructors we often write in a certain language and all that sort of thing, that if there's anything in there that isn't clear, you keep notes on that and that you ask your instructors to clear that for you. So the first type of information you'll see there, what Jonathan's been going through, is the course information. So it gives you the kind of the description of the course. It tells you who I am as the instructor. It gives you experience on how, or explanations on how the course will run, so how it's structured, what sort of assignments are expected from you, and then other important details as well. And one thing I'll just mention within the course kind of syllabus that's an important note that I often have to kind of remind students of at various points throughout the course, and it's something that's not always apparent, but the weekly calendar for online learning is not exactly the same as kind of the week. So, for example, the weekly calendar for online learning, it may start on, say, a Wednesday as opposed to a Monday. And so, for example, in my course, if it says that the assignments are due on the last day of that week, that refers to the weekly the online calendar, so not necessarily a Sunday. In the example that you see there now from 2020, the weeks did run from Monday to Sunday, but that isn't always the case. So as students, that's one of the most important things to check out. And if it's not clearly established in the syllabus, to ask your instructor what they mean by the end of the week. Or the start of the week, questions like that, which seem quite basic, but they are key for you as students to kind of meet your deadlines and that sort of thing. The other thing I want to touch on here too is in terms of the syllabus is the evaluation. So if you want to click on that, Jonathan, and take us there. Yeah, so you can see in my course that the evaluation is kind of listed out very clearly. So it tells you what each assignment is, it tells you what week it's due, and it tells you what the percentage is, what the assignment is worth, what the value is. So in that, what I would say, just as a piece of advice, is at the beginning of the course, is that you sit down and go through this information and kind of note all the due dates, note the value of each assignment, and then think a little bit about the kind of effort that you're going to be putting forth as a student into these assignments, because in an online learning environment like this one, the schedule that you work is really up to you as a student. My class does not have a weekly meeting time or anything like that. It's all kind of self-directed in the sense that you can decide when you watch the videos, you can decide when you read the readings, when you look at the textbook, and that sort of thing within the context of the week. So if you're somebody who likes to work late at night, that's fine. There is no requirement to kind of show up to a class time at 10 a.m. or anything like that. It's all kind of self-directed. But you need to manage your time. And so that's something in the online environment which is can be a little bit tricky to get used to. But I suggest that it's important to kind of look at when the assignments are due and kind of the value of them. So that, for example, if you look at the kind of the assignments there that are worth like 2% or 3%, that implies to you as a student that they don't require quite as much work as the assignments that are worth 12% and 10% and that sort of thing. So I think it's important to keep that in mind as you kind of look at that. The other thing that you'll see on this page is below the table, the assignment instructions, missed testing, and late policies. So this stuff's all very clearly spelled out in the course syllabus, both for online classes and in-person classes. And it's important for you as students to kind of keep track of all those due dates. Because you don't see the instructor every day, it's not as easy for me to remind you of that kind of stuff. But it's important to kind of keep track of that. And what I always tell students is that if there are conflicts, so if you find that you have conflicts between, say, an online class and an in-person class, although I guess this fall there probably won't be any in-person classes, but say there's conflicts between a due date, like you have a midterm and an essay due on the same day or something like that. Most faculty members are quite willing to kind of work with students about that. But the key thing for me, and I think for other faculty, is that you contact the instructor before the due date, as far in advance as you possibly can, so that we can work out alternative kind of arrangements and that sort of thing. So that's something that I always tell students, is just be, when there are conflicts with schedules and that sort of thing, just be forthcoming with your instructors and connect with them, and just outline the problem for them. And generally, instructors will be willing to help out with that as much as they can. Most online courses like this one also have teaching assistants. So if there's something that you don't want to ask the instructor about right off the bat, you can always start with the teaching assistants as well and ask them, or with fellow students as well. It's important to maintain up that connection with fellow students and stuff too, I think. If you can click on to go to the schedule, Jonathan, I'd just like to kind of briefly show that to the students as well. That's under the syllabus too. Yeah, so most online courses like mine will have kind of a detailed course schedule, which will show you the kind of what's required each week, what you should expect to learn each week, and kind of the assignments and the values for those. So you'll see in mine here where each thing's listed out, and you kind of can see the details there. And also, this is where you can see what I should be taught, what you should be learning about as well. And as students, especially at the end of the term, you have the option to provide feedback to instructors, usually through course evaluations or in person or through email or something like that if you want to. And if you find that instructors aren't keeping to their outlined schedule and that sort of thing, it's good to remind us of that we made these commitments and that we have to kind of stick to them. A couple of things that you'll see here within this is the what's there for videos and articles. So I just want to briefly talk about that a little bit, because I know as somebody who lives in Labrador, I know that bandwidth can always be a concern for students as well, especially if you're taking online courses about, well, how am I supposed to stream these videos, or how do I access the articles and that sort of thing. So in my online course, for example, it's actually possible to download everything. So this is something that I tell students, if you live in a place, or say you're working from home and kind of negotiated internet access in the fall term or over the summer with kind of other family members who may be working from home or doing courses and that sort of thing. By being able to download the material, that means that you can either at the start of the term or periodically over the course of the term, you can take advantage of good bandwidth times and download that material, and then you'll have it on your computer and you can kind of go through that and have a look at it. And if you're not able to download something for other reasons, I also wouldn't hesitate to, you can see Jonathan highlighting the download or the print function at the bottom of the screen there now. If for whatever reason you aren't able to download it, it's also possible to contact me as the instructor and request if there's some other way to get the files to you. And the folks at CITL and most instructors who work in this environment will do whatever they can to kind of get that material to you. I know for people who live in rural areas, especially where bandwidth may not be good, this is always a concern, and this is something I was concerned about actually as an instructor, that maybe my bandwidth wouldn't be good enough actually for kind of accessing the platform and that sort of thing. And I can tell you from my personal experience, especially working from home over the course of this spring, I've always been able to kind of access students' assignments and that sort of thing. Sometimes it takes a bit longer to download them, but I've never been not able to access the assignments that students send me, or to return the assignments with feedback and that sort of thing. So, but I can answer any questions about that afterwards as well. The next thing I would like to kind of bring to your attention, I guess, relates to kind of communication. So Jonathan, you can click on the communication tab at the top of the page there. Yeah, so this, and you can see there, I guess for now, if you just want to go to the class list, that'll be fine. If there's something there, I'll point out. So I'm the only person listed in the class because this is a shell that doesn't have any students in it because we didn't want to have any kind of private information out there. But what happens here in the community, first of all, I'll just mention that in an online learning environment, communication is key. It's extremely important because we don't see each other on a daily basis or face-to-face in the classroom. There needs to be effort put in by both the instructor and the students to have that communication. So, for example, in my courses, I use the Brightspace email for all my course communication, which you can see there, the little mail icon, where you can click on that, and then you can send a message to me as the instructor, or under that class list function, you would also find all your other students there as well. Like, so if you wanted to message anybody else in the class. And this is where students contact me to answer questions. I have a policy in place that's outlined in my syllabus that explains that I will respond to messages within the Brightspace course message within a 24-hour period. So if you message me within the course shell, then I will respond to you within 24 hours with an answer to your question. If you don't use the course shell to message me and you send me an email, like to my regular Monday email, I'll usually still respond to that, but there's a greater chance that I won't see or notice that message because it goes to my regular email that comes in with hundreds of other emails over the course of a week. So using the Brightspace email for myself is key. Instructors are different, so it'll be important as students to kind of look that up in your syllabus and find out what the important, or find out how the instructor wants you to communicate with them and then follow those instructions. The other option within this is the instant message function. So for example, on the screen there right now, you see my name, my photograph, and then Neilsen Scott, and you see that little green dot that's highlighted. That tells you as a student that I'm online. So you have a really quick question that you want to send me that's related to an assignment or something like that, and you see that I'm online. You can click on that instant message function and send me a message that way. And I'll get a notification and it'll pop up, and then I can answer those questions directly, quickly. So those ones will get immediate responses if I'm online or within a few minutes, whereas emails will get 24 hours. And this is actually a pretty good response rate. It's something that I put a lot of effort into, but it's important in an online learning environment that the communication like this happens frequently and timely, because you don't want to leave students kind of in the air. Whereas if you were coming to my classroom 2 times a week or 3 times a week, then you would be able to ask me the questions that you had in person and get a response right then. And so this is where I try to make up for that. If you can go to the discussion section now under communication, Jonathan, that would be great. So this is the other parts of communication. And so this is a section in my course that I guess different instructors use it differently, but I try to use this section of the course to replace the kind of in-person discussions that we would have in classroom, either between students or kind of between myself and students, where that kind of informal learning that occurs through discussion and answering questions and that sort of thing. So one thing I'll point out here is the student cafe. So this is actually a section that I don't access as the instructor. The TAs don't access it either. So this is an area for students to kind of have conversations with each other, to ask questions of each other about the assignments and about the courses and that sort of thing. Because you guys are a cohort, so within the class, so you are there also to support each other. So it is, as an instructor, I encourage and hope that you are communicating with each other outside of kind of the communications that we have, and that you're asking questions and that sort of thing. Now, I'm not encouraging you to plagiarize or to use somebody else's work or anything like that, but in an educational environment, the most important learning that often happens in the class setting is through those informal discussions that students have amongst themselves. And so this is the place where you can do that. And I promise that myself and the TAs don't access these locations. So it's also a place for you to have ask questions of each other about the instruction and that sort of thing. Below that, you'll see the weekly discussions, and this is something that I use in my class. They're referred to as talking circles in my classroom because even though I should have mentioned off the top, I am not an Indigenous person, which some people assume that because I'm the coordinator of the Indigenous Studies certificate that I'm Indigenous. In a perfect world, and hopefully sometime in the near future, I'll step away from that role, and we'll have Indigenous faculty members at the university who are interested in and willing to take that role on, and I'll gladly hand it over when and if that happens. But the talking circle is an idea that I've borrowed from some other online classes and some Indigenous instructors who I know who teach in this format. And I used to call these discussion posts, and that the idea of changing them to talking circle is one, to kind of instill the respect for the speaker, or in this case the communicator, the typer, that comes from a talking circle where everybody is respected and allowed to voice their opinions as long as those are informed opinions. So this is something where each week we'll post kind of a question or a comment related to the course material that we're reading. And in this case, I also should have mentioned that my course is a critical reading and writing course, and so the course skills are very focused on helping students learn how to kind of write essays, how to write a summary, and all these sorts of things. To do that, I use reading materials that are related to Indigenous studies. Sometimes they're news media pieces. A lot of times they're related to archaeological practices because I'm an archaeologist, so they'll relate to things like the terminology that we use in Newfoundland and Labrador archaeology, or the importance of involving kind of Indigenous perspectives and ways of knowing in understanding social science research and those sorts of things. So these discussion topics go in weekly, and then students respond to those. So you can respond to me directly, or you can respond to other student comments as well. And this is kind of where I hope that the informal learning that normally would happen in the classroom takes place. And we actually, in recent years, have had some really great discussions where there's long threads with students kind of asking questions of each other and responding to each other. And so it does, when it works well, it does replace that kind of in-class discussion. Of course, there are also times where students are busy and that sort of thing, so the discussion may not be as, for example, the discussion post that may co-occur with the midterm period. Those discussions usually aren't as robust as they are in other times, but that's all right, and that's the way things would be in the classroom too, because during that time you may actually have less attendance in a personal class or something like that. So these sorts of tools that we use in the online class are important as well. The other thing I'll mention in terms of this, it doesn't relate so much to the discussion post, but it's a note that I had made for myself to bring up, which is what I call kind of other helpers. So as the instructor, of course, you can contact me with any questions you have related to the course. You can also contact the TA that's in the course with any questions you have. But there's also other services on the university which are very helpful to students, and one that I find students don't use nearly enough is librarians. So MUN has a great library system. They have library professionals that work in these facilities who are excited and happy to answer questions that students have about kind of research and where to find information and that sort of thing. So I encourage students to contact librarians as well. And the other important thing is that the libraries have distant services, so document deliveries, and they also have online information, like Jonathan just popped up there that you can see under popular. It says style guides for MLA, APA. These sorts of resources are very important for classes. Some of them are built into my class, but not all of them are. So students should also kind of explore the library page. But also, when you have questions, don't hesitate to use the library staff. They have a chat function where you can quickly ask them questions. They also have a document delivery function. So as distant students, if you're not located on campus, You can request resources and they will either send you digital copies of them or they'll actually even sometimes mail you a book and that sort of thing. So they're very important services. The other one that I would say is very important for online students, or for all students actually, is the Writing Center. So the Writing Center is a place on campus where you can either, well now with the COVID-19 restrictions in place, you can email them assignments and have them review them for you and provide you feedback on them on proper formatting. And for example, they may not know the details of the content, say around archaeology, but they know the details of how to properly format a bibliography, or how to properly format if you want to include an image in your essay or something like that. So that can be very useful, and I don't think students use that information or that resource enough either. Another thing I do with my classes is I have a policy in place that if you complete a draft of your assignment 5 days in advance of the due date, you can actually send me the assignment for feedback as well. Not many students take advantage of that, but if you're in a class that has, where the instructor volunteers to kind of give feedback on drafts of assignments, think about that in terms of creating your course schedule and trying to build that in. So having your assignments done far enough in advance that you can provide them to the instructor or the TA for feedback is very important as well. The very last thing I'll talk about, and then I'll stop and let Jonathan take over and provide a lot more detail on kind of the Brightspace platform, is in terms of assessment. So Jonathan, if you can just go on to the assessment page there on the course. Yeah, if you want to click right on the assessments, so it'll take the, yeah, so I just wanted to show this because sometimes students are often wondering about, okay, well, I know I have to do assignments, but how do I get those to the instructor and how do I get my feedback on them and that sort of thing if I'm, not seeing the instructor in person. So all of my assignments are submitted this way. None of them come to me in paper format. I even do this for classes that I teach in person, actually. And so what you see here is you actually see a drop box for each of the assignments. And so when you click on that, if you want to click on one of those drop boxes, Jonathan, that'd be great. You click on that, and this is actually where you'll go as a student to add a file. And so you can add your assignment. So either in a PDF or a Word document can be added. And then that allows me as a student to or as an instructor to then access that assignment. And so what I do is I actually download the assignments to my computer, and I read them on my computer, and I provide feedback directly on the assignment as I would a paper assignment, using either track changes or the PDF comment function. And then I can actually upload that assignment back into the assessment folder and send it back to you. So you get the direct feedback right on the assignment as if you would if I was handwriting my comments on your assignment, along with kind of any general comments and along with your grade. So that information is all accessible here in the assessment folder. And in online settings, the instructors are usually pretty good at getting the feedback to you in a timely manner. So, for example, in my own course, I have a policy in place that you have to have feedback as a student. You have to have feedback back to me prior to the next assignment being due so that you can incorporate that feedback into your assignment. So, for example, you see my first assignment is a formatted essay reading list. So I give you the students a list of readings. They format that into an APA-style bibliography. And then each assignment after that has a component of it that includes a reference or a bibliography reference. And so then I expect those to be formatted correctly because I've given you the feedback after that first assignment. So it's kind of a process of building up towards the end of the class where you actually then write a full-on essay for the final assignment. And so it isn't as difficult to get assignments to instructors as students sometimes often think. And I've never had a problem where a student wasn't able to upload the assignment to the Dropbox. Sometimes there's broken links and that sort of thing, but CITL can always fix those very quickly. So I guess that's the other thing about other helpers is don't hesitate to contact the CITL support staff when you have problems with uploading something or downloading something either, because they can usually fix that for you quite quickly. And I guess the other important thing that that relates to communication as well is that getting detailed feedback on assignments as well. So because my course is a critical reading and writing assignment course, the assignments are all written assignments, so they're not exams per se, where multiple choice questions and that sort of thing. And so there is a lot of feedback that's provided by myself and the teaching assistants. And so it's very important for students when they're assessing or getting their grades back to actually go in and read that feedback and to think about it. And if there's something in the feedback that's not clear, then to contact the instructor or the teaching assistant to ask them about that. Like, what did you mean here? Can you explain that a little bit more clearly? And the one good thing about online courses, because in a classroom setting, not everybody has the same confidence about speaking out and talking in front of a group setting. And so the online platform, I find, really kind of levels that off, in the sense where you don't actually have to ask your questions in front of your cohort or in front of the other classmates. A lot of the questions are asked individually of the instructor or the TA. So oftentimes for online courses, students who may be a bit more shy or a bit more reserved, that doesn't become as much of a factor. I'm going to stop there in the essence of time, I think. But after the end, after Jonathan goes through, if there's any questions for me at all, feel free to ask them or to pose them in the chat, and I'll stick around as long as possible to answer those questions.
Thank you, Scott. This is Jonathan Kavanagh. I'm with CITL. I'm the Client Services Coordinator. Scott, I really want to thank you for that overview. We typically kind of go through that ourselves, and it's really nice to get an instructor's perspective and lots of good advice there from Scott as he went through his course and his typical layout. And I will say that you know, the best piece of advice I think I took from Scott there was to really just communicate with your instructor. So while you know, I'm looking at Scott's course here, and it's really well laid out, and there's lots of information, and it's quite clear to students what their expectations are. But if that's not the case in your course, then just, you know, contact your instructor and communicate with them, and they'll make sure that you're able to understand what is expected of you and how you go about fulfilling those expectations. So don't be shy to send a quick email or instant message to your instructor, as Scott showed us, to clarify things if it's not you know, overly clear at first glance. So just a few tools that are also available in Brightspace that I'll go over that some other instructors may use. I tried to point out as much as I could in the background there as Scott was talking. One example, so Scott used for assessments here is the assignment folders. So I'd just like to point out a few pieces here, and I'll continue to use Scott's site for now. So as you'll notice, if we look at his first assessment piece, or his first Dropbox folder, so he puts in the title here that it's due on week 2. And you can see right here that as a student, I haven't submitted anything and I don't have a score. So obviously, as I submit stuff, that would be updated. It would show the file name I submitted here. And it would just show submitted under evaluation status. And once Scott provides feedback, I would see that there. As well, in this case, the instructor hasn't put a hard due date on there, which means the site will never prevent you from uploading your assignment. But some instructors do use that feature. So they'll close the folder based on the due date. And you'll see that due date listed right here in this space if that's the case. So if Dr. Neilsen had put a due date of you know, today, for example, you would see June 23rd, sorry, listed right here, along with a specific time. And so we always recommend to students that you know, to ensure your paper has been uploaded. After you submit, you can just view the history right here. So there's a view history button. And if I had submitted any assignments, I could select the folder and it would show me down here exactly what I have submitted. As well as you receive a course mail from the system automatically confirming that you've submitted your paper. So you would go up to your course mail up here in the top bar and go to your course mail right here, and you would have an email receipt saying the system received your assignment. So obviously, again, that's another benefit to you guys of the site. You wouldn't get that in a in-class scenario. So you always have that confirmation, and we recommend you hold on to those for the remainder of the semester, or at least until you get your final grade. The other tool, assessment tool that I'll point out is the quiz tool. And I'm not sure if Scott has any, but if not, so Scott has some quizzes here as well. So as you can see, your instructors may use the quiz tool to kind of provide you either a self-check, so it might be a quiz that's not necessarily graded, but a way for you to go in and see how you're doing in the course so far, or it might be part of your assessment. Of course, that would be listed under the syllabus. And to start that, you would just go to assessments, quizzes, and then you would pick the particular quiz. So again, if there was particular due dates on those, that would be listed here. And so if it's unclear what the due dates are for a particular assignment or a quiz, again, as I'd like to reiterate Dr. Neilsen's advice, just, contact your instructor. As well, we did look at discussions a little tiny bit here. Great use of the discussion tool actually in this course, particularly just the environment there for you guys to chat as classmates. Kind of replaces that, before and after class chatter that you might have that turns out to be helpful with the course. But just a few things I wanted to note about discussions, things to keep an eye out for. So in this case, there's no lock date, but sometimes if you're required to make posts, you'll see a date here, and that means you have to make your post by that date. Keep an eye out for that as well. And the other thing is there is a setting that forces students to make a post before they can read the others. So for example, if Dr. Neilsen is using that feature here, you wouldn't see your classmates' posts in week 1 until you made your own, and then the remainder would show up. So if you're finding you're not seeing any posts, but you're approaching the deadline, it's probably because you need to post first. And you'll see a little note there as well that shows up around right here that says post first. So that's just a little tip to keep an eye for. And as well, I did try to kind of show you in the background as Dr. Neilsen was talking, but you can subscribe to certain posts as well. So for example, if I really wanted to not miss any posts here in the Student Cafe, I would click subscribe, and then as my classmates or as my instructors post, I get a notification up here under subscription alerts. So unfortunately, I don't have any to show you right now, but it would just show you an alert here that there was a new post or a new reply, and you could quickly jump to that. So that's a good way to keep a track of the important threads in your course. The other thing I will quickly show you, and I've kind of been using it as we've been going through, is really just the nav bar up above. So as you can see here, I've been, you can jump to course mail or you can jump to subscription alerts. The final one here would be updates. So that would show you if there's been any announcements made, things of that nature. As well, you can always return to your home page. So if for some reason you're in your course and you're not really sure where you've clicked into, you can return back to the home page. And if you're taking more than one online course or one remote course, you don't necessarily need to go back to the home page. So if you're coming in, you want to jump through each course quickly and check out the discussions, you can use this button right here to jump between your courses. And you can pin your courses to the top of your list. So as you can see, I have these courses pinned to always show on top. And that's for the purposes of quickly navigating to them. So I would pin this semester's courses up top, and I could quickly jump around to them. The other feature I will show you on the course home would be the announcements tool. So on the Brightspace homepage, when you log in, there's an announcements tool. That's more general for the entire campus or multiple campuses. Whereas the announcements tool on your homepage, if your instructor has decided to use it, will be specific to your course. So some instructors choose to email all their students at once, others choose to use this announcements. You'll kind of quickly catch on at the start of the semester which instructor has using which tool. And if your instructor is using the announcements tool, make sure you keep an eye on that as well. So the last thing I'd like to cover is really probably the most important part in my opinion, and that would be our student resources. So we've given you a lot of information today, and we've given you kind of a tour of Brightspace. Obviously, this might not be a tool you might not use until September, and don't necessarily expect you to remember all that. Keep in mind, Memorial has a very complex orientation plan for students for the fall semester, so you'll get plenty of other introductions to Brightspace as well. We have a couple of sites, and I'll post the links in our chat. So we have a resource site, which I'll quickly navigate to, which has some great resources for students. So there's Brightspace guides, as you can see up here in the top, and that'll take you through step-by-step how to do certain things in Brightspace. So if that might include, making a post. So if you're taking Dr. Neilsen's course, you don't remember how to make a post, you can come into Brightspace guides and go to discussions, and there'll be a step-by-step walkthrough on how to do that. And as long with those technical resources, we also have some more resources about, how to prepare to study remotely or online. Those include preparing a study space, as well as time management. I know Dr. Neilsen talked a bit about time management, and that's, something really important. Using, for example, a scheduler tool if you're taking more than one course, putting all your due dates in there so that you can, prioritize your time is important, and there's lots of tips of that nature there. And our final site I'll show you would be our support center. And so basically we have a 7-day-a-week support line set up for students. It's just citl.mon.ca/support. So that line is available 7 days a week, evenings until 10 p.m. And if you can submit a request, which kind of creates an email chain with our office. You can instant chat online. You can call us, or during normal circumstances when campuses are open, you can visit us in person. As you can see, our hours are listed below here. And we're available to help you with any technical issues. So there really is no burden on you as a student to worry about how you use Brightspace or how to navigate Brightspace or how to submit an assignment, because we have a team there to support you to ensure that that's something you're able to do. So again, if you're having trouble making a post, you just contact our office and we walk you through it step by step. So we just kind of want to reassure you, between your instructor and us, you've got lots of support surrounding you to get you through your first remote or online course. So if you leave with anything here today, leave with the support link, which again, I'll paste that in our chat tool as a source of support as you go through your courses. So I see Dr. Neilsen has made plenty of posts in the chat. I hope you guys have some time to go through those as well. So that kind of ends the presentation portion of our session. And at this point, we'd like to call upon you guys to ask questions to either myself, Dr. Neilsen, or one of our other representatives here today. And we'll certainly do our best to answer those. You can ask your question by using the chat tool. So in the top left-hand corner, you'll see a speech balloon icon. And if you click that, the chat will expand and you can type your question there. Or if you're comfortable doing so and you configured a microphone when you entered today's session, you can turn on your mic and ask your question as well. So Ruth, I'm not sure if there's any questions in the chat that you'd like to point out to us.
Yeah, so I'll jump in here, Jonathan. It's Ruth. Kelly Ann Butler asked about the difference between remote and online. We're in the process of working with the registrar's office on those particular definitions. We have one that's set up for instructors, but the difference, I guess, basically in remote and online is really going to come down. Oh, and there's one on the Student Resources website. Perfect, Jonathan. If you can share that link, it'd be great. The biggest thing, I guess, you want to share is that a course is a course at Memorial, and that all of the courses are taught and developed by Memorial's faculty. So it's not like you're going to get one of these self-directed learn on your own type courses. When you register for either a fully online course or a course where you're going to have to learn remotely due to our current environment, you'll always have the support of a faculty member to help you through that learning process, as Scott and Jonathan have described as a part of their presentations. Kelly, I think with that link now you probably have the response that you need, but if you still have questions, you can certainly post them in the chat. I think the other thing that you will find is that at the Memorial University, we've been developing fully online courses for quite some time. And so there is a pretty sound structure around how the online course content is presented. But I think what the biggest difference you might see when you go in, but it's really dependent upon the faculty member and their comfort level with technology. You might see a site that's a little less robust, but very highly interactive with the faculty member. So when I say less robust, it's from that technology perspective. But the faculty member is very highly engaged, sharing their PowerPoint presentations, recording lectures, and some may even host real-time sessions like this, where they might deliver a lecture and handle questions and answers and that sort of thing. So I think it's really hard to provide a clear definition because it's really dependent upon how the instructor decides to teach the course. So you'll see some that are really well thought out and planned and like I said, have a lot of information in them. And a lot of them you might see, they might be recorded lectures or they might be webinars like this throughout the term as the faculty member determines the best way to relay their content. But you're right, Kelly, it's a question that we get a lot at CITL around what that particular difference is. Did anybody else have any other questions that you wanted to pose to either Jonathan or Scott?
I don't have a question, Ruth. This is Scott, but I can just give a quick example from my own teaching to speak to Kellyanne's question.
Awesome.
So in terms of, because I teach both ways all the time, even like pre-COVID, I taught both remotely and online. So in my online teaching, which is the course shell that we've been sharing today, other than instant messages or perhaps a telephone conversation if a student needs to talk to me on the phone or something like that, there is no face-to-face kind of live interaction. The students are able to access all the course material, all the lectures, all the documentary videos, all the readings and that sort of thing at their own time and in their own pace, keeping within that weekly schedule. So that's the online learning. For remote teaching, I teach classes this way as well, where basically I'm teaching through a video conferencing function similar to what we're using here today, where the students see me in person on a screen and I see them in person on a screen, and I give the lecture live and they join live and ask questions that way and that sort of thing. So it's and those types of remote learning courses, although not always the case, often have a regular meeting schedule as well. So you would meet, like, say, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 1 to 1:55 online sort of thing, as opposed to being able to access it at your own time and your own schedule. So, for example, if you're a student who is taking a heavy course load, or that you have, say you're a part-time student and you work full-time, those are important considerations when you're picking your courses, that an online course is something that's going to be more flexible, whereas a remote instruction course may not be. It doesn't mean that it won't be. As Ruth said, it differs from instructor to instructor, but it may not be quite as flexible in terms of time frame and schedule as an online course.
And to your point, Kellyanne, the registrar's office is looking to kind of put some parameters around that notation once faculty actually identify the format in which they're going to deliver their courses, if they're going to do it real time, if it's going to be partially real time. And so that if students are expected to be online, as Scott had said, in real time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, then that would be on the in the registrar system, outlined for them in that system, so they know in advance if they need to be online at those particular times for when that class is being delivered. So the registrar's office is working on those particular details to hopefully provide students with a little bit more direction too. Did anybody else have any other questions? I know we're coming to the hour that we said we would be available online, but I'm sure we can stay online a little while longer if folks did have particular questions.
Ruth, while we're waiting to see if anyone has questions, I just want to thank Dr. Neilsen for his interesting and very informative information on his course that he teaches, and also for providing explanation as to the importance of why we do land acknowledgements at the beginning. So thanks for that, Scott. And of course, thanks to Jonathan for providing some more information about Brightspace and the resources that is available on the CITL website, which is very useful for our students, of course. And thank you, Ruth, for this opportunity for all of us to come together. And of course, thank all the students and staff who are here today as well, who signed in. And I think it was a really nice session today, so that's great.
We appreciate that, Valerie. It's nice to have the opportunity to get in front of our students and share this type of information. And I believe if you watch the CITL website, we'll be hosting more of these types of sessions as we get closer to the start of the semester. And as Jonathan alluded to, you'll learn a little bit more about Brightspace as a part of the MUN orientations that are going to be happening remotely. And I believe some of them may be starting next week. So if you are registered at Memorial University, you'll likely get a notice about accessing that learning environment, and it's within Brightspace. So now you have a little bit of an orientation as to how to get in and access the material that's presented there. So thank you for the opportunity and reaching out, Valerie.
Thank you. Thanks again, Ruth. This was great. I'm hopefully now, like Scott mentioned to students, if they have questions, reach out to him. And of course, CITL is there as well to with some great resources on their website to help students as well.
All right, not hearing any other questions, we will say good evening and thank you for your participation. I'm not sure if anyone is typing something. I can't see if folks are typing, but I'll stay online here for another couple of minutes in case something else pops up. But if you don't have any questions, thank you very much for your participation and have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.